especially to our professor, Dr. Early Moreno Molo. My name is Melrose Mangoba Gado, and I'll be discussing the topics assigned to me, which are how to conduct needs assessment, 7 steps in conducting a successful needs assessment, and conducting a needs assessment survey. Now let us start how to conduct needs assessment. First, understand the requirements of your project. Before you can confirm that you're able to meet the needs of a project, you need a solid grasp of what's required. So let us start by ensuring that you and your team are clear on the overall objective of the project, as that will give you important context. Surprisingly, only 55% of the people involved in the projects feel that element was clearly explained to them. This overarching goal should be emphasized in your project plan, so it's always top of mind. Next, number 2, get a grasp on what you already have available. Now that you know what's required for that project, it's time to turn your attention to your existing resources. We have to ask ourselves, what do we already have available that we could use for that project? We have to connect those stats whatever we can because that's the information we will be needing as we move on into the next step, which is identifying any gaps. You can create a list and pinpoint what you're missing. This way, you'll make sure to uncover and address any gaps which can vary from a particular skill set. So did the previous steps show you that you already have a lot of project needs addressed? That's great. But there are bound to be some needs that are currently fulfilled. This step is all about pinpointing those gaps. Where are you missing what you need? For example, perhaps you have a lot of helpful expertise on your team, but you realize that nobody has the graphic design skills you're going to need to pull this project off. Write down that gap so you don't forget about it. The last step in conducting needs assessment is to take action to fill those gaps. A needs assessment is only useful if you do something with the information you find. It doesn't do you any good to identify gaps if you aren't going to do anything to address them. So that's what this final step is all about. If you have noticed that you're lacking graphic design, know-how for this project, how are you going to fulfill that need? Will you outsource to an agency, hire a freelancer, or provide additional training and resources to an existing team member? Find the best solution for bridging that gap and then take steps to make it happen. Before you get too far into the project, remember, your goal is to start with everything you need in place. Okay, now let us proceed to the 7 steps of conducting a successful needs assessment. First one is, or step 1, clearly define your needs assessment objectives. So when defining your objectives, ask yourself, why are you conducting the needs assessment? And what do you plan to do with the findings? Like for example, if you are working in a program seeking to increase breastfeeding initiation among first-time mothers in a community, your needs assessment objectives may include understand breastfeeding knowledge and intentions of first-time mothers in your community, or determine necessary training and supports to increase breastfeeding among first-time mothers in the community. Step 2. Be realistic about your resources and capacity. Consider how much time, money, and staff capacity you can devote to the needs assessment. For example, do you need to assess the current state of your program and implement changes within 3 months? Or do you have an entire year to examine your program's landscape? Also, how many staff are working on the project and what percentage of their time are they devoting to the project? The availability of resources will greatly impact the needs assessment activities that you are able to conduct. Step 3. Identify target audiences and data sources. So given your objectives and resources, consider the target audiences and data sources that will help you assess your needs. It is most effective Or is it most effective to administer a survey to a wide range of community members, to hold several focus groups with hospital administrators, examine existing reports, or directly observe project participants? Sometimes you'll need to conduct several complementary needs assessment activities to collect data for a range of stakeholders. Step 4. Think small and big when summarizing results. You have collected the necessary data to achieve your needs assessment objectives. Now, it's time to dig into that data. Try to summarize and reflect on data for each of your needs assessment objectives individually. Step 5. We have to get feedback. From an equity standpoint, it is especially important to engage community members as equal partners in understanding and translating results from the needs assessment. This ensures that people most affected by the program will have power in determining its design. Now, step 6. Disseminate. You have done your work, now share your findings internally and externally. This helps ensure that all project stakeholders are on the same page regarding project priorities and resource allocation. Present your findings at community events, professional conferences, and other relevant venues. Your efforts may inform and inspire other public health programs working on similar initiatives, and feedback from others can help you move your work to the next level. Now, the last step, which is take action. At the conclusion of the needs assessment process, review your original objectives with the final results and recommendations. Doing so will highlight what steps are needed to achieve your goals, whether that's addressing gaps in knowledge or building capacity among project participants. Then, most importantly, take action and use those findings to develop your project approaches. Now we're done with the 7 steps for conducting a successful needs assessment. Let us proceed to the last topic, which is conducting needs assessment survey by first defining what is a needs assessment survey. It is a way of asking group or community members what they see as the most important needs of that group or community. Now, what are the common characteristics of a needs assessment survey? Well, it has a preset list of questions to be answered. It has a predetermined sample. It is done by interview, phone, or written response. And it has results that are tabulated, summarized, distributed, discussed, and used. Now, why should you do a needs assessment survey? Is it important or is it not really necessary? Well, we should do a needs assessment survey because it is to learn more about your group or community needs. A good survey can supplement your own sharp eye observations and experiences. It can give you detailed information from a larger and more representative group of people than you could get from observation alone. Next is you can get more honest and objective description. And you can become aware of needs you never knew about. And you can also document your needs. Now the question is, how do we carry out a needs assessment survey? First, we have to identify reasons for choosing to do the survey. Why are we getting involved in this? So the answers may be immediately clear to you, but perhaps your reasons are not entirely clear. So let me ask you this question. What are our reasons for choosing to do this survey? So asking these questions gives you the chance to become clearer. Number 2, we can identify survey goals. So what are our goals in doing this survey? What do we want to get out of it? How will the results be used? Again, your goals may be apparent. They may also relate to your reasons, but you ought to be able to state them before you begin. Step number 3, decide how much time you have to do the survey. So are we ready to conduct the survey? Are we prepared to do the work that needs to be done with high quality effort? So before we begin, make sure our answer is yes. And how much time can we allow? So your answer will depend upon what is already known, upon the size of your target group, upon the importance involved, and upon the resources you have at your disposal. Number 4, we have decide how many people you are going to question. For a smaller group where you are asking everybody, this question will not arise. But with a larger group, when you are using a sample of the total population, you may want to be sure that certain parts of that population are included. Number 5, decide who will be asked. And number 6, decide what questions will be asked. So these questions will depend upon the scope of the assessment. Number 7, decide who will ask the question. If you do interviews, the more people asking, the more ground you can cover. However, you also have to train more interviewers, both in general interviewing skills and in using a standard procedure, so that results don't vary just because the interviewers operated differently. So if you use written surveys, this question is less relevant. But those who give out and collect the surveys, you should be thoroughly and uniformly instructed. And remember, if you can bring together a group to help you design the actual questions, your group members will almost always think of good questions and ideas you wouldn't come up with alone. Number 8, create a draft of the survey. So include the instructions. This is an often neglected part of the survey work, but don't forget it. Your instructions will set the tone for those who will be responding. Number 9, try out the survey on a test group. Number 10, revise the survey on the basis of your test group feedback. So sometimes this test and revision process may need to be repeated more than once. Number 11, administer the survey. Number 12, tabulate the results. For close-ended questions, this can be a matter of simple addition. For open-ended questions, you can code the results into categories. Get some feedback from others about what categories to use, because the ones you decide on will shape how you interpret the data. The next step, interpret your results. So interpretation goes beyond simple tabulation. Number 14, plan future actions. Now comes the main payoff of your needs assessment survey and your main reason for having done all this work. Bring the results and interpretations to your full group and decide what to do next. A good answer may once again take thought and discussion, but you can now plan and implement future actions with greater confidence that those actions are based upon the real needs of the people you want to serve. So after planning your actions, you have now to implement your actions, which of course is the reason we do these surveys in the first place. So the results are there to be used for action, and your group should have already agreed to use them going back to the beginning. And lastly, we have repeat your assessment at regular intervals. Just as it makes sense to see a doctor once a year or so for a checkup, even if you're young and healthy, it makes sense to revisit community needs as well. Community needs can change. You want to be sure you know if, when, how, and why they do. For needs assessment is really an ongoing process, just like community action itself. Now that's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much, everyone. God bless and keep safe.